We get our latest update in regard to Roki Sasaki, and Andy Martino gives us the latest on Pete Alonso. We'll react live with you next on MetCast. Welcome back to MetCast, friends. As always, I am Rain. If you enjoy our content, we just humbly ask you to like and subscribe. If it's your first time being here with the channel, welcome. Today we got a update on Roki Sasaki. I wanted to bring it up for you guys right here. Roki Sasaki, close to finalizing which MLB team he will sign with, reveals his agent Joel Wolf. What's really interesting about this is Sasaki, I saw another report out there that is going to visit one or two cities in regard to where he's going to choose to sign. Remember, it's not about money. It might be a couple 100,000 here or there, maybe $1 million, but he's going to make way more money in endorsements off the field than he's probably going to make with any team. He'll have the Japanese media following him. Odds are, I think he's going to stay out west. He's going to choose one of three teams, maybe the Angels, the Dodgers, or the Padres. But don't forget, the Mets and the Yankees both got visits with him, and supposedly they went well. His latest rounds of meeting, he specifically said he does not want any players from any teams coming out. He wants it to strictly be ownership and I believe management. And one thing we know as Met fans, Steve Cohen is the ultimate salesman. Look what he was able to do to convince Juan Soto to come here. Remember when they asked Juan Soto in his introductory press conference, what was it that made you want to come here? Steve Cohen sold him a vision, not only for the present, but for the future. And that's why when we're going back and forth on these lives, as we did previously, the Mets are far from being done this offseason. I find it very hard to believe that they're going to convince Juan Soto to come to our team and then say, we're just going to run it back with the team that we had last year. Still have Pete Alonso out there, but I want to get to a clip that I seen today from MLB Network where they really break down Roki Sasaki and what he is as a pitcher. It's actually Al Leiter breaking it down. I found it fascinating. Let's take a look.
Makes him super attractive is, and major league hitters at WBC saw what he has, is that, Matt, this guy, he's 6'2", it says he's 185, you can see he's slender, he throws over 100. He touched 103 miles an hour.
Guys, look at that delivery. It is so smooth. That's when you know it could potentially last throughout MLB and seasons to come. When you see a guy like Noah Syndergaard, who we all knew was muscling the ball to the plate, it was only inevitable the downfall. This guy's a legit pitcher. It is so smooth and fluid. You look at the gun there, 101, 102 miles an hour. There's nothing better than that in baseball when you're watching that.
This is smooth, easy gas. So anybody, you don't have to be, a professional pitching coach or guru to know that there's a lot to work with when it's smooth, fastball at 101, 102. This is the national pitch, folks. Japanese pitchers, they throw a splitter, and it is...
That splitter probably moved 2 or 3 feet right there. That is absolutely filthy.
Nasty. He's got two different breaks. It looks like a slider at times, goes away to the righty and into the righty. This is awesome. He does have a third pitch, which is a slider, which is good. Look at this pitch right here, the Verdugo. I mean, that is just split like forkball. Those two pitches make him premium. What makes him interesting is that he's cheap. It'd be no different than if you were going around and drafting a college kid or high school kid. Mm-hmm. That's the way they're looking at 23. You're not having to give him a Yamamoto 12-year, $300+ million deal.
That tells me right there that he has a place in mind that he would prefer to go to, probably the West Coast, because he could have waited 2 years and then come over to the United States and gotten that Yamamoto type contract, maybe even more. I mean, his stuff is better than Yamamoto at this point in his career, and he's younger by 2 years, in my opinion. The Mets have a shot, probably like a 20% shot, but hey, some said that we were fourth in the running for Juan Soto behind Toronto, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees, and even potentially the Dodgers, maybe even the Giants. I think we have a legitimate shot here, and I'm going to believe in Steve Cohen. If you're telling me that we're able to bring on this kid and trade for a Luis Castillo, all of a sudden this entire offseason changes. The entire offseason changes. But enough with that. Now we're going to move on to this video that we have of the guys over at SNY breaking down the Pete Alonso situation. Let's give it a listen.
Or the Mets and Alonso right now?
You know, that's a tough thing probably to define, Sal, in terms of like one's here and one's here, because I'm sure all kinds of different concepts have been tossed around and discussed, both internally and between the sides. So I'll answer that question by saying a couple of numbers that I think make sense to both sides, which probably could give you a sense of why he hasn't signed with the Mets or anywhere else yet. I think 138 million is a number that could mean something to Alonso, because as we know, he turned down 158 for the Mets about a year and a half ago. He made about 20 last year. So then that kind of erases that. That's a contract that I don't know that he's going to reach in this industry right now. But if you're the Mets and you're just looking at the general aging curve and the trajectory of Alonso's performance over the past couple of years, you might be more comfortable with a really high average annual value, 25, 30 million, shorter term deal, a couple of years, maybe some opt-outs. So those are pretty different concepts. And there's really no reason on January 2nd, as we sit here, for either side to accept something that's like way not what they want. So I think that's probably a decent summary.
Let's be honest. They're both playing with fire here. If Bregman signs, say with the Tigers, all of a sudden those teams that missed out on him, potentially the Giants, Seattle, the Cubs, the Mets, the options start to dwindle. It's different when there's multiple guys out there. I mean, you got to think the other teams are thinking the exact same thing. There's no pressure to go out and sign Alex Bregman. Yeah, well, if Alonso signs back with the Mets, or just say Alonso goes to the Giants, because the Giants have been throwing money at literally everyone and can't land anyone. But say Alonso goes and lands with the San Francisco Giants, all of a sudden, all the teams left at the altar, including the New York Mets, drive up Alex Bregman's price. That's why I think that both of these guys are still out there, because they're hoping the other one signs where they could then drive up their own market.
Conceptually of where we might be.
Wow, so it sounds like there's some more cooking to do on this.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate, because the Mets are in serious need of a big bat. Sal, you nailed it. They need some protection in that lineup. They just spent $750 million on Juan Soto. I think at some point they need to come to an agreement with Pete and get him in there. I mean, I wrote down some names for their lineup. If you want to go this way, start off with Lindor, then you got Soto, then you got Vientos batting third, and then your cleanup hitter is Brandon Nimmo. I don't love it. Yeah, I want somebody else.
I hate it. Let's be real. Brandon Nimmo cannot be hitting cleanup. You can't bring back Jesse Winker to hit cleanup. Francisco Alvarez needs to prove his bat at the major league level to be up in the order. Alonso just lengthens the lineup. You want to tell me Nimmo's your 5 hitter? Okay, I'll take it. Maybe Jeff McNeil has a bounce back year. We don't know. That's the wild card here. A, is Jeff McNeil on this team? And B, can he have a bounce back year?
In there and pushing Nimmo down a little bit. I mean, I still think he's going to contribute and all of that sort of stuff. But I think that they need more offense. You know, the Dodgers have made some serious statements this winter. And if your goal really is to get to the World Series, that's who you're competing with. Yeah. And, you know, you're also competing with the Phillies, who have a huge rotation. The Braves can never be counted out. There's a lot.
I think the Phillies on paper are definitely a better team than us right now. Don't shoot the messenger. Just are the facts. We don't have a Zach Wheeler. Yes, we have Juan Soto, but they have bats all over the place. Let's keep a spade here.
In the Mets' way to get to where they want to go, adding bats is going to do it.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't even love Pete necessarily. My first choice would have been Soto and Adames. All the other options are off the board. Adames.
I'm glad we didn't get Adames. If I'm going to spend that kind of money, you have to have an 800 OPS at least once in your career.
Obviously went off the board before Soto. Now plan B has got to be Pete, and there are no options behind him. So if it's not Pete, then who? They're kind of in a spot where they need Pete Alonso back.
Which is why ultimately, gun to my head, I think they probably get something done. So I don't mean to be too doom and gloom when I laid out to begin with. But I just think if you look at where they're coming from, they probably have some work to do.
Let's make the call to the bullpen and welcome in Jim Duquette. Jim, where do you think the Mets and Alonso stand right now?
You know, I agree with Andy and what he just said.
Take what Jim says with a grain of salt. I respect Jim as a former GM, but he made it seem like Juan Soto, there was basically no shot he was coming to the New York Mets. Again, Let's call a spade a spade. That's what we do on this channel. That's my opinion. You may disagree. Let me know in the comments. But I take what Jim says with a grain of salt.
Said, I think there's definitely some work to do. What concerns me a little bit is you're starting to hear some other names kind of creep in there, and sometimes that is, a ruse that's thrown out there by the board.
That's Scott Boras. Let's again call a spade a spade. What did we hear last week or 2 weeks ago? Washington is getting involved in Pete Alonso. Everybody start panicking. But then you saw, no, Scott Boras is trying. They had preliminary. They had an inquiry. They probably said, hey, what is he looking for? And then they went out there and said, oh, well, Scott Boras is trying to push the Nationals to up their offer to a long-term contract because they know at the end of the day, if what was reported is true, Pete Alonso is going to take whatever offer he gets and bring it back to the New York Mets. Once you hear that as a team, you're not willing to negotiate against yourself. The Mets are saying, we'll throw out an initial offer, 3 years, $90 million reported. Whether it's not true or not, we don't know. But we're going to throw that out there. If someone beats it and wants to negotiate against themselves, bring us their offer back. And teams aren't willing to do that at this point.
Corporation, but you heard the Giants last week, you hear the Angels today, and I'm not saying Pete wants to go to either of those spots to the West Coast, but those teams are definitely,
Remember, Pete's a Floridian. He's not a West Coast kid.
Something to at least keep it in mind. And listen, Corbin Burns is a good example of one of those things where the Giants thought they had the inside track. They made the biggest offer. They were sitting around. They wouldn't go any further, and he ends up signing somewhere else. And Pete could very easily do the same thing.
That's my biggest fear.
To your point, Sal, like they need Pete.
The Giants are that team that have been left at the altar time and time and time again. And I know they got their guy in Adames, but they need to do way more to satisfy this fan base.
At this point in this lineup, there's no question on that. So, I think at some point, you might see, the owner push towards the end and kind of push this over the finish line like he did with Nimmo, even if it has to happen here in the month of January, a little bit later in January. But right now, I feel like that both teams are kind of playing with a little bit of fire. The Mets don't want to go much further. Pete's starting to look at some other teams. I don't like the feel of either of it, and that's why I feel like this is something that maybe they should be finding some.
A lot of ifs, ands, or buts. But I agree with Jim in that last point where he's like, they're starting to look for other options. Pete Alonso's starting to look around. Maybe he wasn't at first. Maybe he thought the Mets were going to give him what he asked or come close and they would be able to negotiate at the table. Supposedly, the Mets and Pete Alonso are about $110 million apart. It's like more than double what the Mets' original offer was. For me, I've been saying this. I will go 4 for one between 100 and 110. You want to give him $25 million a year over 4 or $27.5 million a year, make it around 110. I'm okay with that. I don't think I'm going beyond 4 years for Pete Alonso, and it might take that. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What are you going to give him? What is reasonable? We got to stay reasonable. We can't just say, let's give him 6 or 7 years what he's asking, and then whatever, we'll deal with it down the line. That's not how good teams operate. David Stearns is a very good GM, president of baseball operations. He's not just going to throw ghost years at the end of that contract. But that's all we have for today. If you guys, again, like this content, please like and subscribe. Consider giving us a follow over on Facebook and on X at MetCast Pod. And as the news trickles in, we'll be sure to bring it to you. Thanks for sticking around. I am sick. I know I probably sound a little off today, but thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, take care.